everyone, I'm Dina.
And I'm Charlotte.
Welcome to the Grim Curriculum Extra Credits.
Welcome. Thank you all for joining us here today. We have some stories from across the board for y'all to listen to.
A real variety of tales.
We do.
Yes. I'm going to hop right in with mine because this is one I've been seeing on Twitter a lot.
Okay.
I looked into it. I was not familiar with this case at first, but it's very sad, and it looks like we have a suspect in the murder of Rachel Morin, and this is quite a high-profile case.
Okay, I don't think I've heard of it.
I hadn't heard about it until the suspect was found. Like I said, I just started looking into it, but I have been seeing her name pop up on our Twitter.
Okay.
So what happened was she was 37 years old, the mother of 5.
Oh, no.
Yes, and she was killed along a popular hiking trail in Harford County, Maryland last year.
Okay.
She was found dead on August the 6th, 2023, and that was a day after her boyfriend had reported her missing.
Oh, man.
Super sad. There didn't really seem to be any leads for a little while. Like I said, this was just about a year ago almost, until they found a man by the name of Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez.
Wow, that's quite the name.
23 years old. So here's the thing with this guy is he is an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador.
Okay.
And it turns out that he had escaped El Salvador in February of 2023 after murdering another young woman in that country.
Good heavens.
Yep. So he fled the country to get away from this murder and murdered again. And in March of 2023, he assaulted a 9-year-old girl and her mother at their home in Los Angeles.
So just an absolute menace.
Oh, yeah. And 23 seems so young.
Or is this man just a serious psychopath?
I mean, he is definitely not a good guy. The sheriff in Maryland said Victor Hernandez did not come here to make a better life for himself or his family. He came here to escape the crime he committed in El Salvador. He came here and murdered Rachel and, God willing, no one else. He is being investigated to see if he's connected to any other crimes because it really seems like this guy has a pattern.
No kidding. And obviously we don't have much for motive and everything at this point, presumably if it's still fairly in the investigation. But to just be attacking people like this randomly and all over the place, he doesn't seem to mind the fact that should he get in trouble in America, he will be quickly dealt with and deported back to El Salvador, I would imagine.
Yeah, and this wasn't some remote area. This is a very popular trail.
Oh, God.
He hid away from where he could be seen and basically jumped out and attacked her while she was walking.
So just hiding in a bush, boo.
Yeah.
I'm going to murder you.
Yeah, basically.
Jesus.
So Interpol issued a warrant for his arrest, and again, he was picked up. He has connections in the Washington, D.C. area, Virginia, Prince George County, and ties to multiple gangs.
Okay. So this man, he has a bit of a background.
Yes, and they are hoping that he will never walk free again after he has been charged.
I should hope not.
Really sad. They're calling it divine assistance, but on May 20th, which should have been her 38th birthday, was when they found the lead that connected them to him. It's definitely looking like they have their guy. When they caught him, he tried to lie about who he was and what he was accused of. And very, very quickly after that, they were able to prove that it was him. He is going to be extradited back to Maryland. That should take about a month or two. So there's going to be updates in this one. This is all very, very fresh. He was just picked up. And this guy's a real trash bag. I mean, mother of 5.
Just going for a walk.
Yeah.
Not to get off on a tangential rant here, but this is the shit that women are terrified of.
Yes.
She's going for a walk in a public place, and this fucker jumps out of a bush and murders her.
Yes.
How can you predict that?
You can't. And again, a well-known path, an area that had people frequenting it on a regular basis. They're not saying whether or not this was targeted, but to me, it seems like he was waiting for the right victim and he found her. And Yeah, it's very, very, very sad. And I hope that they throw the book at this guy because, again, this is not the first person that he's murdered. Definitely not the first person he's attacked. They're going to try to link him to more, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I would imagine, unfortunately, that they will find more because if this is as random as it seems to be in the first stages, then this man clearly can't control himself.
Mm-hmm.
And should he go free, which I'm thinking he won't,
No.
It would certainly seem to me like he would attack again.
It seems like escalation to me. That's kind of what I see here because this is just so brutal. It's so random. And he had ties to crime as well as murder, the gangs, all of that. So not the kind of guy you want walking around the streets.
No kidding. I hope for her family's sake and the sake of the other families that he's victimized that they're able to get some closure with this. Like you say, I hope they throw the full fucking book at him because this is awful.
Yeah.
Woof.
So yes, Rachel Morin, we will keep you all posted with this one. I'm going to be watching it just because it is so sad. And I don't normally... Extra Credit has really made me pay attention to current crimes. I've always been more interested in things that have happened in the past that are, the story has already unfolded.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of the stories that we talk about on this show are very much not. I'm thinking of the Idaho 4 that's still happening in trial.
Yes.
Rex Heuermann, the Gilgo killer, that's all unfolding as we speak. And it's interesting to see just how long the process is.
Absolutely, because when we think back to the old and very infamous publicized cases, even if you want to talk about say Bundy or any of those big heavy hitters, when you read about the case, like you say now in modern times, and it's like, oh yeah, the trial was in such and such year, and then they were sentenced in such and such year, you're parsing the information very quickly.
Very much so, yeah.
But realistically, as it happens, you're like, oh my God, can we finally get a sentencing for this guy? Or can we finally get a trial date for this person or whatever? It drags and drags. Like you said, with the Idaho 4, that's been going on for a couple of years now.
And it doesn't seem like they're reaching any kind of resolution with that case because he is appealing everything. He's trying to find loopholes. It's interesting because when, like you said, when we hear about a story after the fact, you really only catch the highlight reel or so to speak of the trial.
The details.
Exactly. And with the Idaho 4, we're seeing every single little tidbit and it almost seems like there's something new every single day.
Yes, they're discovering new things. There is more clarification on certain facts or certain information. And even those tiny little pieces could change the whole course of a trial, of an investigation. When you're seeing it all play out in real life, in real time, when you look back on the ones, like you say, the cases that are sort of neatly done in a bow tie, they're done, they're sentenced, they're put away. It's nice to know for sure that some sort of resolution is coming. But when it's happening in real time, you're literally waiting for that next piece to be like, is this motherfucker going to go free over some tiny, tiny little thing?
And it could happen.
It absolutely could, especially when you're in the thick of it. So yeah, Mr. Hernandez, I hope he ends up somewhere alone for a very long time.
I couldn't agree more.
In slightly more jovial news, shall we say.
Good.
It is still sort of a more modern thing. For those of you pop soda drinkers out there, you may have heard that very recently, Dr. Pepper booted out Pepsi for the #2 spot of soda in the world.
I don't know a single person who casually drinks Dr. Pepper.
I think as of late, it's become almost more meme-ified. There's just this presence around Dr. Pepper. I've certainly heard people talking about it on Twitter and TikTok and all this stuff. And it's sort of become its own Baja Blast almost, if that makes sense. But yeah, so Coke, still #1, Coca-Cola, was Pepsi Cola in second place, but has been replaced with Dr. Pepper, which is still a PepsiCo beverage, if we will.
I'm shocked that more people drink Dr. Pepper than Pepsi.
I would argue personally that I prefer Dr. Pepper. It's got a little more to it than just your average cola. But that's not the debate we're getting into today. Because this came up, I found that there's actually a Dr. Pepper Museum.
Okay.
Which I didn't know there was enough history on the subject to necessitate an entire museum. But the reason I'm bringing it up for us all today at the Grimm curriculum is that apparently there's ghosts in the Dr. Pepper Museum.
Dr. Pepper lore goes deep.
Yes, it certainly does. So the Dr. Pepper Museum and Free Enterprise Institute is in Waco, Texas. It underwent a makeover in 2021, and one of their new offerings is this paranormal experience that you can have as you are touring.
Oh my God.
So I will say before we get into it, the cracked article that I'm reading from today does say that the professional investigators, heavy quotes around, deemed that there was evidence of hauntings and that they discovered a few different ghosts. Apparently, there's plenty of dead people associated with Dr. Pepper who could be haunting our museum, its founder, various executives. But one of our very first ghosts that we'll be talking about today, they found him via live transmission through a spirit box. This ghost simply called themselves Smith, but apparently refused to give any further information. So we don't know anything about Smith, just that they're a ghost that haunts the Dr. Pepper Museum. They had no messages. That was it. They were just like, Smith, I'm here.
Okay.
Little boring, but
not a chatty ghost.
Another ghost was identified as Shorty, who apparently was a mechanic working at Dr. Pepper, and he was killed in 1953 when the Waco tornado hit. But this ghost also doesn't give up a whole lot of personal information that would help us confirm Shorty's real life identity. Just that Shorty complains that he was killed by the Waco tornado back in 1953. The story does seem to come from a guy called Bill Little. So this is a real professor at the Southwest Baptist University. But he also couldn't really provide any other information, like an actual name for Shorty, his birth name, or like his age or anything like that. We have a few anonymous ghosts, but as it turns out, no one's really managed to capture any phenomena on the equipment that's typically used by paranormal investigators or video or anything like that. But Dr. Pepper's really leaning into the ghost thing and saying that your tour of the museum could be haunted. You could experience some supernatural events. There's a good chance that throughout the history of PepsiCo, they go back a long time, a surprisingly long time. Times when maybe factory regulations were not as safe.
Yes.
So there is a good chance that a lot of people died in unfortunate and tragic circumstances that can definitely leave that sort of spooky imprint on a location. So in addition to the testimony, if you want to call it that, of Mr. Smith and Shorty, the museum does purport that it is certified haunted. I don't know what regulatory bodies certify a place as haunted. They do not believe that any of the entities come from the time period that this building existed as a factory. So they're basically saying, yeah, back in the day, people could have died, but we don't think any of these ghosts are from that. But how they can confirm that, I don't know.
Interesting. I'm looking up Dr. Pepper death to see if anything comes up.
They are basically leaning more towards that the private dwellings, the boarding houses that existed before the museum was in place are probably the reason for our hauntings. And they're saying, like, it wasn't us, it was the previous owners, basically. But they're still leaning into it and saying, Dr. Pepper Museum has ghosts. These are our ghosts, but they're not quite our ghosts. But there are ghosts if you want to pay money to see them, basically.
That's why they're number 2.
So if you're in Waco, Texas, amongst some other things that come to mind in true crime history, go visit the Dr. Pepper Haunted Museum, I guess.
It reminds me of Nuka Town in Fallout.
Yes.
And I feel like that would be something that you would go to in a game where you're visiting this like abandoned pop museum and there's ghosts and it's creepy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
I've never been to the States at all, but I would like to visit Texas, and I would definitely be stopping by the Dr. Pepper Museum if we're ever doing a road trip through the South.
Yeah.
I personally think it seems to just be a bit of a gimmick to get people in the door. But I would say if you're already a fan of Dr. Pepper enough that you're going to go visit the museum, you're probably going to visit the museum whether or not there's ghosts there. The ghost is just the sprinkle on the cake, for sure.
But you have a good point, because if you told me like, hey, we're going to go to the Dr. Pepper Museum, I'd be like, all right, Charlotte,
sure,
like,
yeah,
whatever.
Okay.
But if you were like, hey, we're going to the Dr. Pepper Museum and there's ghosts, I'd be like, hell yeah,
absolutely.
Take me right away.
They say any other little events they've had that are of the supernatural variety are just average anonymous ghosts. They have not been identified.
I love it.
Nobody has, like I said, managed to capture any kind of phenomenon on cameras, but maybe one day we will have actual proof. So yes, that's the haunted story of the Dr. Pepper Museum in Waco, Texas.
I love it. I love it. And okay, I'm going to say one last thing about Dr. Pepper. I've been thinking about it. I have no clue what it tastes like.
Well, in my mind, it was always just kind of a cherry Coke or like a cherry cola. But apparently, what is it they say? That there's like 19 different ingredients that make up the Dr. Pepper flavor. So I don't really know. I know it tastes good with rum.
I can see that. Yeah, that's fair.
But that's about my knowledge of Dr. Pepper.
I've got a museum for you too.
Oh, I love a museum.
This one's called the Poozeum.
Of course it is, because why wouldn't it be?
So a man who holds the Guinness World Record for the largest collection of fossilized poo has opened up a museum showcasing his treasures in Arizona.
Well, I know from Animal Crossing, you collect your fossils.
Yeah.
One of the fossils you can pick up is fossilized doo-doo, which is a thing that archaeologists and paleontologists find all the time. Dinosaur shit, basically. Yeah. So I could see how that is of interest. Now, are we talking about like human poopy, or are we talking about fossilized dinosaurs and stuff?
This is all fossilized. It looks like it is all fossilized dinosaur poo. Sorry to disappoint, because I kind of although it looks like there are a bunch of different kinds, different species of animal poo that he has in his collection.
What is it called when it's like Coprolite or something?
Yes, Coprolite.
Okay, there you go.
And he has 8,000 pieces of it.
Whoa, that's a lot of poop.
I wonder where he was keeping it before, though.
Shoeboxes.
Right? Neatly stacked shoeboxes.
Labeled appropriately.
So this guy, his name is George Franson. He was motivated by what he calls the glaring absence of coprolite representation in museums.
Okay.
And he started the Poozeum in 2014 as a virtual resource center, but now he has a real location that he's very excited about. All of this started when he was a teenager. He was in a rock and fossil shop and he found one, and he said, instantly, I found it both hilarious and fascinating. And that sparked a curiosity to learn all he could about them.
I definitely went through like a dinosaur and fossil period in my life when I was a kid and stuff. Definitely obsessed. I love that he was like, there is not enough attention on this. I'm going to be the guy.
Well, he's taken it really seriously, because in 2015, he had 1,277 pieces. And nearly 10 years later, like I said, 8,000 pieces.
Whoa. So maybe you know, maybe you don't. Are these pieces that he has personally found himself, or is he like a collector where some he finds himself, some he has given to him, some people reach out to him?
I think it's a little bit of both. He's definitely tried to find some on his own. Now, he does have a website. Oh. I'm going to show that to you.
Oh. World famous dinosaur poop museum and gift shop.
It kind of doesn't look how I would expect. I'm going to show you guys who are watching on Patreon so you can see.
I will give him credit. It's a whole lot classier than I was expecting it to look, to be perfectly honest.
He doesn't charge admission.
Wow.
Good for him.
He just wants people to be interested in the things he's interested in.
You know what? I can relate to that. He does have a section here that says, it's pronounced Coprolite.
Coprolite. Okay.
Yes. There are so many different pictures of poo on this website. Apparently you can get ones with teeth.
Well, I
bite
suppose,
marks.
I mean, if it has teeth in it, I would assume that the dinosaur that pooped it out had eaten something else that had bones and teeth, presumably.
Yes. Now, he has pieces from all around the world. He has some from Wyoming and South Carolina in the States, obviously, Morocco.
Well,
he has ones that are all miscellaneous that he calls the Coprolite medley. And he is, I guess, you know what? He is living his best life, and I am happy for him. He does have a shop. I just want to this is his Etsy shop from the looks of it.
Excellent.
And I mean, you know what? I buy weird stuff because I like having weird stuff in the old curio cabinet. And I would probably buy, it's all t-shirts. I thought it'd be poo.
Hey, I wouldn't mind buying a t-shirt to support. I'm so sorry. Did you say where this Poozeum is located?
It is in Arizona.
Okay.
Williams, Arizona. Now, he doesn't sell poo on the Etsy. Maybe you're not allowed. But he does have a t-shirt with a dinosaur going to the bathroom on a toilet. And then he has one that says, Coprolites aren't my favorite fossil, but they're a solid number 2.
Okay. I love that.
I'm happy for him.
You know what? I don't think I would personally go out of my way to purchase a piece. However, if I were to find a fossil of my own and have it identified, I would keep it for myself because I'm the one who found it. But yeah, I don't think I'd go out of my way to purchase a piece of my own poop.
It's fun that you say that because a few months ago, Steve and I went to this big rock show at West Ed.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and we picked up a ton of pieces, and there were a lot of pieces of poo, and I wanted to buy one, and I kind of regret not having it because I just thought it'd be fun.
Hey, I mean, I don't know if it would take a place back there with the uranium glass that we have in our little curio cabinet here in the studio, but
who on a pedestal?
Yeah. Interesting.
It's the one thing we're missing.
You know what? If you're going to be famous, you got to be famous for something. And I can't imagine there's too many others out there that are claiming the title of the Poozeum curator. So good for him.
If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Very true. And like you say, he doesn't charge for admission. So he's doing this out of the goodness of his own heart and wallet.
Yeah, good. You know what? I wish him well. I hope the Poozeum does fantastic. And we should get some t-shirts.
Well, I guess if we're ever road tripping down to the States to visit all the things, we'll have to hit the Poozeum and then we'll have to hit the Dr. Pepper Museum. Oh my God.
That'd be one hell of a road trip.
If you have been to the Poozeum in Williams, Arizona,
go.
Please tell us what your experience was like. And if you're in the area and didn't know it even existed, please go visit.
It's free.
For us.
Just go.
Just go.
Yeah. And then email us, thegrimcurriculum@gmail.com. Tell us about your story of your experience at the Poozeum.
Absolutely. I want to hear it.
I wonder if they have free public bathrooms.
I would hope so. Because let me tell you, when you first said I have a Poozeum story, my immediate jump to, since we just covered the foul and rancid Albert fish, and obviously, I guess I always thought coprophilia, which is the philia of poop. I guess it's caprophilia now. For those of you who watch in What We Do in the Shadows, all I can hear in my head is Matt Berry going, coprophilia.
I love him so much. Oh my God.
I'm really glad it's not human poo.
Yeah.
Because that seems like a really, really odd selection to have. And also, I feel like not legal.
I was just thinking that. I don't know.
On one hand, I feel like it's like a biological hazard.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I don't imagine there's too many places where there's a specific law in place that's like, no, you may not collect human poo.
Honestly, maybe there should be. I don't know.
Maybe there should be, but I digress. The story I have for you next.
Okay.
Not particularly morbid. Potentially.
Okay.
I'm sure we have some listeners out there that were Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. If you're not still, I personally wasn't because I don't do group activities.
Same.
But this is just an interesting little article on the 7 merit badges that Boy Scouts were forced to discontinue. So for those of you who do know about the Boy Scouts, a very prominent thing is their sash.
Mm-hmm.
And as you develop certain skills in life and through Boy Scouts, you get a merit badge. So certain things might be like sewing or basket weaving seems to come up, or things like that, helping your communities, different sports, different skills, that kind of thing. So we're going to be talking about a few of the ones that were discontinued, and most of them, I would say, were for pretty obvious reasons.
Okay.
So the Boy Scouts, it's an institution that goes back a long, long time. They were founded all the way back in 1910. So our first merit badge that is no longer available to earn is the taxidermy merit badge. And I can only imagine that's because parents didn't want their young scouts dragging roadkill off the roads and being like, I'm going to earn my taxidermy badge today, Mom.
Oh my goodness.
Plus, especially back in the day, preserving of animals, just like preserving of human beings, can involve certain chemicals like formaldehyde that is maybe not the most safe thing for your 7-year-old Boy Scout to have and be playing around with.
Jeffrey Dahmer would have loved that.
He really would have, because maybe if he was able to earn his taxidermy Boy Scouts merit badge, maybe he wouldn't have taken the course he took. Our second one at first, and when I read it initially, I was like, well, duh. The badge itself was called the Master of Arms badge. So in my mind, immediately, firearms came to mind.
That's what I'm thinking.
Which, back in the day, for your kid to have a little .22 rifle or something like that, totally not uncommon. Even in Alberta today, a child having a .22 rifle, not that uncommon. But it actually wasn't anything to do with firearms at all. Turns out that the Master of Arms badge was earned by learning multiple disciplines of physical combat. So karate, jujitsu, wrestling, something called stick fighting, which I wasn't able to clarify. So if anyone out there knows what stick fighting is, I'm assuming.
I'm thinking of Link in Legend of
Yeah.
Zelda when you just have the Deku stick.
Absolutely. I also assumed, but then I was like, what are we really learning from 2 kids beating the crap out of each other with sticks?
Discipline.
Apparently. Basically, they kind of decided teaching kids to beat the shit out of each other, probably not the best. And if you want your little gaffer to learn a martial art, perhaps sign them up with your local boxing studio or taekwondo or whatever. So Master at Arms is no longer available. Another one that seems strikingly obvious now, but perhaps wasn't in the early days of Scouts, was automobiling.
Oh my.
There's really not a lot of mystery behind this one.
Yeah.
They basically just said children probably shouldn't be operating vehicles. And that was really the end of that one.
Back then, they had jobs, they had cars.
Yeah. Another one, foundry practice. Now, a foundry, as it turns out, does have different definitions. So I was a little confused at first. This is literally a metal foundry, like a steel works, where you would see vats of molten metal.
Oh my goodness.
And like that sort of thing. If you've ever seen like Flashdance, the character is a welder and she works in one of these big metal foundries. So there's sparks flying and there's like I said, humongous vats of molten steel. But apparently back in the day, you could get your foundry practice merit badge. In my mind, I'm just picturing the end of Terminator 2 where Arnold's going down with the thumbs up, except it's a Boy Scout.
Oh my God.
This one, which made me kind of sad, but pigeon raising used to be a merit badge that you could get. And unfortunately, we don't really use pigeons for anything anymore, which is really sad because we're the ones that domesticated them and then basically left them to fend for themselves after.
The history of pigeons is really the truest, tragedy of all.
Absolutely. This is a really niche reference, but I don't know if you've ever seen the animated film Valiant. It was literally, it's a great animated film, but it's about the carrier pigeons during World War II doing messages and stuff like that, and how the Germans had trained special like hawks and falcons to hunt the pigeons out.
Oh my
Amazing
God.
movie. You should definitely watch it, but very sad.
Valiant. I feel like that would just make me really upset.
But yeah, so pigeon raising. No, I mean, you can raise pigeons if you want. You're just not going to get your merit badge for it.
I think Mike Tyson raises pigeons.
No, kiss. Another one that shocked me a little bit that they got rid of, because I grew up in a small Alberta town where 4-H is a very prominent activity for a lot of farm kids. But the beef production merit badge is no longer available. Essentially, that whole thing was you raise a calf from babies, you show it off, you look after it, and then you butcher it and put it in your freezer, and you got a badge for it. They don't think that's a good idea anymore.
I can imagine.
And last but not least, the stalking badge, which I can already hear all your brains going, there was a badge for stalking?
Mm-hmm.
It's not what you think. Basically, they got rid of the stalking badge, but they replaced it with a badge for tracking. So this is not about stalking other human beings. It's not about the little Boy Scouts learning how to stalk women. Stalking and tracking animals, they were synonymous. So if you were stalking, say, a deer to hunt down, or stalking a rabbit or whatever. So they changed it technically from stalking to tracking.
It's a much better word than stalking.
Yes, especially because, again, we are a true crime podcast. Yes. Don't know if you knew that. Stalking doesn't have the best connotations around the world, or around the word these days. So it is now tracking. And that involves like identifying footprints and things like that. Or like, oh, there's some deer hair snagged in this tree. Like things like that. Yeah. More wilderness survival instead of serial killer psychopathy.
That's fair.
So yes, if you yourself were a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, or you know someone who was, those are now 7 merit badges you are no longer able to earn for yourself.
How sad.
How sad. But I don't know. Some of them make sense to discontinue, in my opinion.
Honestly, yeah. Like, I mean, you can really see why it was so much easier to die back then.
Absolutely. And especially, I mean, Boy Scouts in those days, in the early days, we're talking the 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s kind of thing. One of the things that you got as a Boy Scout was your very own knife. Yeah. And so can you imagine little 5, 6, 7-year-old kids running around with their own little pocket knives? The idea was that they're for whittling, of starting a fire, for practical reasons. Yes. But there was some little kids out there shanking each other and laughing.
Oh, of course. What else are you going to do with a whittle knife?
Boys will be boys. I mean, there were some guy friends that I had in high school who used to fire bows and arrows at each other and try to catch the arrows. So do what you will with that information.
I think we've talked about that, and it's still shocking every time I hear it.
You would never have girls doing like that.
Honestly.
Or the boys one would have the bow and arrow. Yeah. They would all stand together in a little circle. They would fire the arrow straight up in the air, and the last person to move out of the way won the game. Again, I'm surprised I haven't been to funerals of more of my guy friends, but I digress.
It reminds me of the Beast of Bray Road, how all the men who saw it either tried to fight it or take pictures of it, and the one woman that we have on record that saw it, she's left.
Yeah, she's like, I got in my car and I tried to leave as soon as possible.
Yeah. Different responses from different people.
Yeah. So what else do we have today?
I think it's time for our strange and unusual death.
Okay, I'm here for it.
All right. This one is very, very recent.
Oh, wow. Okay. Modern.
So this was in Indonesia.
Okay.
We do not know the woman's name.
Okay.
It has not been released. Her husband noticed that she had gone missing. She is a 45-year-old woman. She failed to return home, and he began to get worried, and he filed a missing persons report. He eventually did his own kind of investigating. He was looking around and he found her belongings, which made him suspicious of, hey, you know what? I think something terrible happened to my wife. As he's looking, as they're kind of trying to figure out where she went, they see a python.
Oh, dear.
And they notice this python He's looking a little extra plump.
Oh, chunky python, never a good sign.
No. So they cut open the python, and as soon as they did, her head immediately popped out.
Oh, no.
And sadly, there is both video and photos of the body being cut out available on the internet if you so wish to ruin your day. But I tried to look it up how many python deaths there are a year. Couldn't really get an exact number, but I feel like there's too many.
To add on to that point is how many python deaths are wild python deaths and how many are captive python deaths? Because while I don't personally have any reptiles of my own, I do have friends that have reptiles. And I think for the most part, a lot of people take on these exotic animals without enough education on, one, how to take care of them properly, but two, their behavior.
Yes.
And I often wonder, like, you hear the urban legends of like, oh, a lady slept beside her boa constrictor every night in bed, and then turns out it was sizing her up to eat her kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how much truth there is to that thing.
That is a thing.
So there you go.
Yep.
But this poor lady, it sounds like she was just out and about and a wild one got her.
That's horrifying.
Oh, we once watched on Netflix ages ago, and it was like the 100 top deadliest animals in Asia kind of thing.
Okay.
Going all the way down to these horrific centipedes. I don't do creepy crawlies. I do not do creepy crawlies. These horrific centipedes that would like sting you, and basically it would feel like your body was on fire for 6 weeks or whatever. All the way to things like the pythons, certain like bears and whatnot even. But I don't expect that as you're walking through the woods, you're expecting a python to just drop on you and suddenly have you for lunch.
And I guess it can happen.
It would be, I would imagine, a slow, uncomfortable process.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. There was another story, not to change to multiple strange and unusual deaths, but I remember this happening in the news. This was years ago. There was this kid who was staying over at his friend's house for a sleepover.
Okay.
And the other kid's dad, I guess he had snakes. And one of the snakes got out, and it got out and went in through like the vents and stuff and into the room that the boys were sleeping in and ate I think either one of the kids or two of the kids. I don't quite remember. But like, this is a thing that happens.
Much respect to all of y'all out there with exotic pets. Kudos to you for taking them on and educating yourselves and spending, quite frankly, a lot of time and money and effort making sure they have the correct environment, proper enclosures, all of that stuff. But don't just be adopting wild animals and then not taking care of them properly. Like, there's a reason why certain animals are illegal to own personally,
absolutely.
right? I don't think I would want to be eaten by a snake. On the list of all the random, strange and unusual deaths, I certainly would not like to be eaten by a snake.
Yep. So that's probably the most recent one that we've ever covered. So I'll find something really extra ancient for you guys for next episode. Don't forget, if you have a strange and unusual death that you want to share or a story you want covered on Extra Credit or the regular show, email us at thegrimcurriculum@gmail.com and we will check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Send them all, because I love reading about stuff like this. So even if we don't get to it necessarily right away, send it anyway, because we want to see it. We all have a morbid curiosity here. That's why we're here.
Exactly.
That's why we're listening. That's why we're talking.
For video versions of our episodes, early episodes reveal, shout outs, all that good stuff, check us out at patreon.com/thegrimcurriculum. Make sure you follow us on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, X. Subscribe to us on all the things. Say hello. We would certainly appreciate it. And we have a lot of fun chatting with you guys.
Absolutely. And I saw a couple of listeners were asking on Twitter, where's the best place that you can support us? Where's the best place to listen? And honestly, anywhere and everywhere. If you're a Spotify kind of person, we love that. If you're YouTube, if you're Apple Podcasts, that's fine. Listen to wherever your little heart desires. It helps us all immensely. And like Dina says, if you like to listen, say on Spotify, but then you want to see our beautiful faces telling the stories, you can hit us up on Patreon. The full video episodes are all there. And apparently they've been a big hit. So
yeah, and we usually, like, Charlotte does a great job of including extra stuff in the episode. So you can either see me feeding you weird stuff or extra little conversations or what have you. It's been a lot of fun. And one more thing about what you were saying is if you're listening on a certain platform, but you want to do that kind of one step above, see if you can rate us 5 stars, see if you can comment on the video, interact with it, because that is the kind of thing that brings more people in. And of course, share it on your socials. That helps a lot too.
Yeah, if you're listening on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, I know there is a thing where I usually ask a question at the end of the episode. Typically, I keep it to what do you guys want to hear us cover next? What stories do you want to hear us tell? So if you want to comment there, you definitely can. We see them all every time. So you can comment there as well.
And listen to it 5, 6, 7 times. Do the thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Grim Curriculum Extra Credit.
Bye.